Hello and welcome back to the channel and Happy New Year. We're now into January and that means that students from GCSE, A-Level and University will be sitting exams. So what I thought I'd do today is actually go over some revision techniques and tips. So the board is out and I don't expect you to be able to read what's on the board, but this is because this is just my notes and my prompts to get me through this video so I can cover everything I want to cover. So, I should point out that revision is a very self-fulfilling idea and it's really dependent on the person doing the revision, what techniques will work for them and also what subjects they're covering. So from my own experience of doing physics and maths, this video is going to be more tailored to people studying physics and maths and giving you ideas from there. But it should be also these revision techniques can be applicable to other subjects as well. I should also say that there will be some techniques that I won't be covering in this video, so it's not an all-inclusive list, but it should be a pretty broad list of ideas for you. So as you go through the exam system, and especially as you go to university, what you're tested on is not your memory, but your understanding of the subject. So what you don't really want to be doing is just memorising things as revision. You want to be understanding the subject matter so you can apply it to whatever questions the examiners are going to set you. So this can start right at the very point of learning. So when your teacher teaches you something. And one of the techniques I'm going to tell you about is actually remaking your notes. So when you're sat there and your lecturer or your teacher is talking to you, you are making notes, or they'll have a PowerPoint presentation which they'll then provide to you to learn from, which you may want to make notes on as well. However, when the lecturer is explaining something to you, it tends to just wash over you and you don't tend to be making a good quality note while you're doing this because you're trying to keep up with the lecturer, especially if they are using PowerPoint presentation. If they're actually physically writing on the board, at least the pace then is at the same pace that you can write at as well. And the lecturer may also be talking while that, and you want to try and take that in, and it doesn't always go in. So the first bit of advice is, and obviously this is no good if you're just about to have exams, is in the week after that lecture, set aside some time, or that lesson, set aside some time and actually remake the notes and write them out, because this will also help you develop the memory link to actually what you've written, and you can go through it at your own pace and make sure you actually understand what's going on. If there's something you don't understand, you can flag it up. And that comes on to the second point, the resources. So if you don't understand something in a lesson, or if you go back and remake your notes and you don't understand something, the easiest thing to do is go and see your lecturer or teacher and ask them to explain it to you again. Failing that, you can use a lot of online resources. So things like YouTube. So my own videos are will teach you about maths, and also I'll probably do something about physics in the future. But there's lots of online resources that you can look for where people are explaining it. And one of the reasons why you may not have understood in the first place is just the teaching method that your teacher or lecturer uses. Somebody else might explain it in a different way, which then you do understand. So look at these resources that are out there. Another resource is textbooks. See if there is a textbook on that subject that will explain it. Although sometimes reading things can get a bit dry, so find out what works for you and using these other resources that are available to you. There are also things that you can also do which is just practice the question. So if you've learned something, you then want to test yourself on it. So normally a lecturer or teacher will give you homework assignments, which is part of the practice for this, and also testing yourself to see if you've understood this. But there's no reason why you can't find more resources to actually test yourself with. Again, if you go online, there are plenty of homework sheets from other institutions that you may not attend, where you can practice and go through them. So this is one of the key parts of basically learning, is understanding. We're now going to look at some of the ideas that will then progress from this. So to improve your understanding of something, there is obviously the remaking notes that I've said, but also teaching others. So if you have to teach something to another person, you normally have to have an understanding of it, and the way you explain it to them might actually improve your own understanding in the first place. Obviously, you'll need to find somebody to teach, so if you have younger or older siblings, then there might be a good example, or parents. If you have somebody who already knows a subject, then they may be able to pick up things that you've explained wrong, and therefore improve your understanding. So if you can find somebody with the time to help you with this, and you can have a go at teaching them a part of your subject, this is a very good way of going through this. Obviously, some things in revision does involve memorising. So things like equations, so the equation for that relates resistance, current and voltage is V equals IR, and you may need to memory recall this in the exam. So what techniques are out there for actually memorising the sort of formula or just facts? And there are a huge number out there. So you can do the repeating method. Basically, you just repeat things over and over to yourself until they sink in and stay in. That's one method. Another method is a song. So I've recently had a student who could memorise the digits of pi to 20 decimal points by using a song and a melody. So that's how she remembers that. You can use acronyms. So if you were memorising something, you can turn it into an acronym. Of course, that also means then you have to remember the acronym and what each letter in that acronym stands for. Another one is stories. So this is a memory technique that is quite popular if anybody's remembering long series of or lists of facts or objects. They put them into a story, and the more absurd the story, or the more unusual it, the more likely it is to stay in your mind. But again, it also relies on you memorising the story. So, for instance, if you had to memorise a series of pictures, let's say there was a knight, a tennis court, and a potato, you could memorise that into a story and say a knight was in a tennis court frying a potato. And then you remember that you've got the knight, the tennis court, and the potato. Again, you have to remember that story, and you have to remember which parts are actually the things that you're trying to remember in it. But it is a method that works for for many people. Another good way of memorising stuff, if you've got a photographic memory, so you're just looking at it, and it'll go in and you can recall it from a photographic memory. Another one is an audiographic memory. So if you get somebody to say something to you, and you can hear it, then that may help it stay in your mind. You can also, if you record it, you can replay it back to yourself. This is sort of along the lines of, can you remember film lines? That's the idea of that. If you hear it enough time, you can remember what it goes through. And again, there's still moments from my sort of GCSE days when I was doing economics where I can still remember sort of the definition of different parts of economics, because I can hear that teacher's voice in my head when it comes up. So again, that's another useful way of remembering stuff. We're now going to look at timing as well. So when you choose to revise is important, and that refers not only on sort of a daily level, but also on the actual period of learning a course. So you could learn something, you could then try and commit it to memory, so you could do one of these techniques to try and practice it, but then when do you try and recall it? So there is research and there is a technique where you try and recall it a week later, because the effort going to recall something actually helps it sink into the brain. So you recall it a week later, and then you try and recall it, say, a month later again. And that effort of going to recall it actually helps. So the distance between recalls is important, so you try and make those recall attempts longer. And then again, that helps with the brain development of memorising. Obviously, that doesn't work if you've got an exam next week. As far as actually times when you actually carry out these techniques, we've got something called the Pomodoro method, which is named after like a timing device which is shaped like a tomato. So it's like an egg timer or kitchen timer shaped like a tomato. And the idea is that you set a time on it, say 20 minutes, and in that 20 minutes you focus solely on a part of your revision. So it may be that you're trying to revise quadratic equations, in which case you allocate 20 minutes to quality revision time, and you say in that 20 minutes I'm going to have no distractions and I'm going to revise a particular thing. It might be understanding quadratic equations. It might be, say, doing the solving of the square method, understanding where that's from. As part of this, you might be using sort of your textbooks, your say YouTube videos. So I have a video on using the solving the square method or completing the square method. For this, you may go and watch that. You may try and commit that part to full understanding. When the timer goes off, you then set yourself another time, say 10 minutes, when you can do whatever you like. It's your rest period. So you may go and eat, you may go for a walk, or you may play a computer game, whatever. You then come back and you set the timer again for another 20 minutes, and then you continue revision. So what I'd suggest then is in that next 20 minutes, you go through some examples. And you have 20 minutes to do those examples. The timer may then go off again, and you have a 10 minutes break. You then set yourself another 20 minutes, in which case you may go through those examples and mark yourself and see where you went wrong and what you did correct. And if you have gone wrong, can you understand where you went wrong? Can it improve your understanding? So you may have to go back to some of your resources to actually understand where you went wrong and correct yourself. Then you have your next 10-minute break, and then you might set it for another 20 minutes and go through some exam past paper questions to complete the revision. So then you've done a 2-hour revision block in that time, or roughly a 2-hour revision block, which is a good amount of time to revise for. But you've had nice breaks as well, so it doesn't get monotonous and you don't overextend yourself in that time. And this seems like a good idea. Just explain past exam papers. Do not use exam past papers as a pure revision technique. It's not something you can go along and you just do your exam papers, look at your model answers, try and work out what's gone, and then that's your revision done. Exams change from year to year. This is more the sort of final element of it. At lower levels, say GCSE, you might be able to do lots of exam papers, and therefore you'll see questions that come up regularly, and therefore be able to learn how to do that question, rather than understand how the subject matter is for that question. And if it comes in the exam, great. If it doesn't, if it's a variation, then you can be in trouble. As you get to higher levels, say university, where they're really testing your understanding, exact repeat of exam questions never comes through. So just be careful. Use your exam papers to actually as the final bit of your revision, once you've understood, once you've practiced, just to make sure you've actually getting into the idea of how exams work. So that's the Pomodoro method. Another part of timing is when you actually do your revision. People are either, you get the idea of morning birds or night owls, so people get the most benefit at different times of the day. Sometimes you don't have a choice depending on what you're doing. You may not be able to choose when during the day when you want to revise. However, if you do get that luxury, finding the times when you're most productive is best. If you choose to revise in the evening and you find it's not going in, probably means it's not the best time of the day to revise. Maybe morning is. So structuring your revision in that way is better. You may also choose when to revise certain subjects. It's probably not a good idea to spend a whole day revising one subject. So split your day, your revision periods down. So if you're doing 2-hour periods, so you can 6 hours in a day. If you do 3 of those using the Pomodoro method, you may choose to do, say, maths in the morning if you're GCSE, then you might choose to do English in the afternoon, and then in the evening you might choose then to look over another subject that you are studying. And the same goes for university if you're doing different modules. So try and allocate your time, so split up so you get variety as well within that time. Finally, my bit of advice on revision is don't go for the easy parts. So if you can already memorise something, or you already know something, don't spend a huge amount of time revising it because it's not going to give you that much benefit. find the things that you don't understand and spend the majority of the time revising those. I know it's difficult, it highlights your own flaws when you do that, but it does give you more bang for your buck. Saying that, even if you do feel confident with a certain subject, still do allocate some time to revising it, because you may come across something that you don't understand with it. Anyway, I hope all that has been helpful to you. If you want private tuition, please drop me a message. Private tuition, maths and physics, GCSE and A-level, and maths and Key Stage 3 sciences, Key Stage 3. So, thank you for watching, and we'll see you in another video soon.